Oh, wow.
And I said, black elites are out of their mind.
Ah.
They are out of their mind. They have
So
lost their mind.
So after our last conversation, my note was she would love American Fiction. Like that's her movie.
I'm sure she does. I mean, they're all. I mean, we'll probably get into some facet of this, but it's all a clique of people there, and they love each other and they kind of hobnob. It's all self-serving to each other. It's funny. I still have people within the industry that I have relationships with, even if they're distant. And I saw them sharing about how important Origin is. And I was like, before I saw it, I was like, really, y'all? Okay, interesting. There definitely seems to be a kind of alliance around Ava for this film, to make sure that it's, seen as a seminal work. Absolutely are, right? So then if you keep kind of going through that, I realized the film kept amplifying single defiant people, right? She was very big to show there were all these Nazis doing the Nazi symbol.
But there was the one.
Exactly. And like have him center mass, looking like down. Looking.
That was crazy.
And I was like, okay, so she's really gonna go into this idea of the individual heroes in the trail of deplorables, right? It's the Hillary Clinton logic, And I'm watching it. And I'm going, Ava, like, okay, homegirl, like keep going. So, individualism, but then I just go back to liberalism. It's just all liberalism. It just goes back to that, right? Individual exceptionalism. Breaking that mold, right? And then, then Wilkerson becomes a mold breaker. That's where her and Ambedkar, who I don't know much about, but from what I had a quick conversation with a friend about him, and then Dr. CBS, I think, also said this in her article, if I remember correctly, that Wilkerson completely misinterprets parts of his work.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. But I don't know. But I don't know. But I am sure.
I don't know his work. But I've been told that, and and then I think also like to classify someone like Ambedkar, and I don't know him, but I think there's something pernicious about making him an individual when his work seemed, even from what you said, to be about people.
Yeah.
It just there's something really yucky about it to me that I just don't. I don't find good. And yeah, so like, the caretakers of our future are the social and liberal and intellectual elite, right? You got Blair Underwood. What's the first thing that Blair Underwood does when he gets the tapes? I have to go find Isabel. Right? It's like, I felt like I was watching a superhero movie, right? It's like,
wow,
right. In many ways though. I mean, it actually gets a little bit more superhero, and
yeah, that's what it is. He does. I had to, and he has to bring her out of her little retirement or whatever, her hiatus or whatever.
She's Captain America, right? She's Captain America.
And just like all the hero, I didn't even think of it. All of them, they always start with, no, I can't. I don't even write that. I don't do that kind of work. I resist. I refuse. Only to dun 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 come in like,
exactly.
I'm gonna do it in the end. And it's all that. Is it really, is Trayvon really the same as a lynching? Is the same as being followed in a store? I'm really adding something new. And people are sipping their shit. Oh yes, Isabel. Wow, right.
Mm-hmm.
All making adding to the out of their mind elites are saying, but we are the ones who will explain all of this. And she goes to her little ghetto cookout, and she can have her auntie say, break it down, make it plain. Don't make it so confusing, because I don't understand race all these years in my little ghetto cooking my chicken.
But did you notice that she never went to one black intellectual in the film? That didn't hit me till after the film.
Actually,
I was
just
done.
Me now. Yeah.
Even I didn't.
My point about the methodology, she doesn't. Yeah, it's not.
She doesn't go to one. And then even when she made it plain, I thought I was like, also, is DuVernay gonna have her go, around, which also would have been, I don't think would have been great either, but is she gonna have her go around and talk to regular Black folk, regular people, and get their experiences, right? Is she gonna? It was none of that. She said, make it plain, and I was like, okay, empty statement, nothing much else there. Or she did go to the one. There was the one. You're right. The pool at the end.
Well, what I'm thinking of is
But
I'm
she didn't go to
thinking.
him. She was the white guy. My bad. I'm
Yeah,
wrong,
no, I'm
actually.
saying what I'm saying is that there's a montage of her talking to various people, and I'm just saying that
You're right.
theoretically, it could be argued that that would have been the scholarship or the speaking to the Black scholars about. But at no point in the film. So again, but at no point in the film do we see her being seated or talking to someone whose scholarship is on the issues of race or caste or whatever, and having this discussion. We don't see her. We see the flashback to the older scholars going to a library, but we don't see her in libraries, if I'm not mistaken. We don't see her doing scholarship. We see her doing interviews, and then we see and many of them all just seem to be with the bourgeoisie. She doesn't interview her aunt at the cookout.
No.
But she's doing all these interviews with people who at least look. Again, we don't hear what they're saying. We don't get the context, but they look like they're all doing quite well, and they're all beautiful, walking in beautiful scenic spaces, having off-air conversations that all apparently lead to her, except for the one friend she talks to at length about the racist experience she had. But again, in a very beautiful home, with the conclusion being, this is caste, and you've helped me see that more. The woman never, by the way, says, I would have thought a natural reaction would have been, wait, my whole life I've been thinking and crying, because she's crying telling the story, trauma, again. But she doesn't say, I thought it would have been natural for her to say in that moment, break this down for me, because my whole life I thought this was a white man being racist. Now you're telling me it's caste. Make it work for me?
Yeah.
Like, because I didn't know this until I thought we were in a racist society until yesterday.
Right. And also, like, at the core is, why do we need this reanalysis? And the insistence consistently by the Wilkerson character is that we flattened everything to race.
Right.
But then she does another reduction. She's if she's saying that race is a reduction, she just gives us another reduction. I'm watching it I'm like when I watch a film and a film is based on an argument, a thesis, I'm like, prove it to me. So I'm watching it going, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. When it just comes to like the words, but then visually, I actually understand what's happening. When I look at the form and the construct of the film, I then begin to see what the filmmaker is attempting to do. And in a way, DuVernay has to make her argument thinner and lean it on her emotional trials, and then connecting her emotional trials to the trials of everyone else, in order for us to buy it. We buy it based on an emotional buy-in, not based on anything that's actual scholarship or real ideas. It's a manipulation. It's an emotional manipulation. I mean, one of the other things I found interesting was like this kind of idea of a secret intellectual class. The two Black scholars and the two white scholars. And I'm not familiar with this history at all of these kinds of, and I found it also unconvincing, because I don't know what they really exposed. It's like, oh, they got to see the burning books, and like, okay, and Fritz Lang saw it too, and he got the hell out of Germany, right? Like many, Ingrid Bergman saw it and said, you know what? I ain't acting here no more. I'm out. Many people saw it. This was not like, this secret thing happening in the corner, right? Like,
And again,
that's
and
actually
I'm sorry, but we're meant to get that these scholars got together after their negative experience in Germany to then figure out, based on that, what was happening in the southern United States. And that was supposed to be part of the connection we were supposed to draw from that, if I'm not mistaken. And
yeah.
then, but to your point, I'm watching the same thing, and all I got was more of, to your point about, I didn't think of it quite that way, but they're literally having a secret intellectual conversation. Then the darker skinned black woman comes around, their neighbor, and they start changing their speech. They start trying to sound
Right.
like they're from the community, in that particular community. And even she's looking at him like, I'll just go get you a plate.
Right. And so
And I'm
then
like,
when I
what is
watched
that?
and then I watched that scene, am I supposed to believe that this black woman is not to be trusted, or yeah, we want to connect with our sister, but our work is so important that we must
We
be in
can't.
secret. We can't. It's the superhero thing again, right? It's this idea. It's it's the Clark Kent moment.
And then they're all Harvard professors who then, I think, we're meant to understand that they take this research, publish it, they go off they're taking their victory lap photographs. And are we meant to then understand that the black woman that they've left in that community now has a better understanding of her condition after their work is published? Is that what the success was?
Mm-hmm.
Is that or is it meant to say that there was a sea change in the national consciousness about the Deep South after these interracial couples come back with their? I mean, it was bizarre. The whole thing was bizarre. And then, to your point, are there no other scholars writing about segregation in the South
Oh, not at all.
at
Not at
any
all.
point
None.
ever?
No.
We
No.
gotta, and we have to somehow live in these fake lives, and that's how we're going to do our research, by pretending to be someone else and basically lying to our neighbors, our subjects, our colleagues, and then that's how you do research. I was like, this is nuts. This is all nuts.
Yeah, and I'm watching it, and there got to a point where then I had to leave Wilkerson, and I had to start thinking about the director, about DuVernay. Because, when a film is made, you are seeing the filmmaker's preoccupations, and their ideological fixations, the things that they believe are important for us to get. And in the film and also in other works, DuVernay, she consistently exposes her class preoccupations. I'm watching Wilkerson, and she needs to highlight that Wilkerson can exist in I wouldn't even call them multicultural spaces. I would call them white spaces. And if they have an element of non-whiteness within them, it's just non-whiteness vetted by whiteness. So she has a preoccupation with that being of serious worth and that having to be displayed. And we must trust Wilkerson because white people love her. And Blair Underwood, who a certain generation of women absolutely love, runs after her to give her some tapes, right? And then what's, I think, also toxic is, yes, Wilkerson's a real person. Her mother, what happened with her mother is really real. Her husband, and her was her cousin, yeah, these are terrible things. But DuVernay uses it to construct narrative struggles, like I said, so she doesn't have to prove any of the ideas are of worth. The proof is the fact that she's suffering. And I said, that's just weak. And that's what people are encouraged to do these days in general. They don't have to prove their ideas. They can be anecdotal or say, well, I lived it or something like that, and not be taken, and also not be taken to task, right? And I'm watching the film try to develop a lexicon around it, love, hate,
Endogamy.
Yeah.
You got the whole Blackboard lesson on endogamy.
Right.
So I made a note. is it endogamy versus white supremacy now? Like endogamy
Right.
versus capitalism now? It's endogamy versus colonialism. I was like, this is deep. We're really getting a whole new. And I think you raise a really good point about that. I just wanted to co-sign that. I just lost it. The last thing you just said. But yeah, whatever you just said was right. Yeah. So I'll just leave it at that.
So, no, but I'm gonna piggyback off of you. I wrote here, using interracial love as a way to prove her thesis that our division is about mentality and not material history, and that the antidote to that is cosmopolitanism.
That's it, and that's what I was. Yeah, and I agree with you that I had thought if I were Wilkerson, I would be. Although the politics, it doesn't. It matches that she wouldn't feel this way, but I think you should be offended at the use of all my suffering.
Right.
Like my mother
100%.
dies, my husband dies, my cousin dies, and you turn it in, you use all of that to create this story. I would be furious. But of course, I'm sure, did the same or something similar or has no problem with it.
I mean, I don't.
But
I don't know
that's the thing. Yeah.
If they worked on the script together. I don't know if they worked on the script together, but I'm sure she had to vet a little bit of it. And I also wrote here. Yeah, the film actually exposes Wilkerson's biased position and viewpoint for naming the root cause to be separation of races through marriage.
Wow.
And I was like, this is just a bias. And I was like, so at the end of the movie, I said to myself, I just watched a film about someone who has a thesis based on her hardship, and she's trying to squeeze a large thing into a small box to make her feel better about her own. Not just, I don't think it's just her marriage. I think it's also her class pursuits.
No,
but
I
also
agree.
DuVernay.
Yeah.
But I think her marriage also is part of her class pursuits. I'm not saying inherently marrying white means that. What I'm saying is she has a very in this case, she has a very clear class pursuit that she's putting together. And then also DuVernay. I mean, DuVernay wants to present this, I think, emotional protection for her class. And then you see it in the construction of the film. There is, I'm watching the film the texture of the film, and I'm like, what did they shoot this on? So I go look. They shot it on 16 millimeter film to kind of give it like weight, emotional weight. Because I said, the one thing I did say was, I said, it actually looks nicer than other films that I've seen her done. I found like Selma always looked very plastic to me. Which is a shame because Bradford Young, her old cinematographer, I think is very gifted, but that film looked very plastic to me. I was like, this actually has a weight to it. I was like,
it did, yeah. So that makes sense. They use that.
I said it didn't look half bad. I was like, so let me Google it. I was like, oh, Kodak 16 millimeter. So she's chasing aesthetics, which I want to get into at some point. She's chasing aesthetics that give off the idea of weight, of worth, of vintage. This is really, I do actually think Origin is her trying to kind of make her stamp and statement as a cinematic artist, in this. And but the fact that this is her cinematic statement is, very, 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 very strange. But yeah, the mobility, it gets into this mobility stuff again. Like, it gives you access, makes you cosmopolitan, more worldly, multiculturalist, and thus you are more elevated, right? Because Wilkerson sees through the whole race thing, which is reductive, and I see it as caste, and I can connect the Jewish people to the Dalits, the Black people, and I can sit here with German intellectuals and Indian intellectuals and white intellectuals, but I was like, where's the Black intellectuals? Like, she don't need Black intellectuals. She is the Black. She's the watchwoman. She is that person. She's the more elevated scholar. And then I got offended And then I just got offended at all the amazing scholars. You know, I listened to your talk with Joy James yesterday, and I'm like, look, I want Wilkerson to sit on a room with her and try to give me some real, because you want to talk about serious scholar.
There's no green lights coming from that, though.
No, of course
there's
not.
no green lights coming
Of
from
course
that.
not.
By the way, she also,
mhm.
speaking of scholarship, she does another traditional abuse of Dr. King by freezing him in 1959 in his speech in defense of Dalits, and then you can erase everything else that he would have eventually evolved to, someone obviously clear on white supremacy, colonialism, and capitalism, but and militarism. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, yeah.
I heard that, but I was like, I'm not as schooled. I was like, I feel like Jerry gonna have something on that, because I saw that.
Well,
I
that was
like,
it.
Something felt off about that to me when I saw it.
It's as soon as you leave, it's again, it's the same trick of leaving the Bob Marley film focused in the 1978 concert instead of the 1980 concert in Zimbabwe. You pin yourself to a very safe. You know, it's like you put the tether ball, and then the tether ball's only going to spin so far because you planted it safely in this 1959, and then everything else he says over the next 8-9 years that turn him into the enemy of the state, you could just leave that out, because the film doesn't want to deal with class, and it doesn't want to deal with race, and it doesn't want to deal with colonialism. So you have King, and then we hear him. They found the audio of him talking about his experience in India, and it's like, but you're taking him to conclusions he did not reach. And you've frozen him in 59 so you can keep him in a nice little, when Du Bois only wrote Souls of Black Folks, so you don't have another 60 years of analysis to deal with. It's some real slick shit. And I'm like, man, they did it again.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I could tell, just because of how the film was constructed, it's untrustworthy, because it doesn't, how it moves through telling stories and then always trying to link it back to images of trauma. I was always untrustworthy. The part of the film that I found to be even the worst to deal with, though, was when she's writing the book. And you see this aestheticized suffering. You have the slave ships, the egregious shot of, I believe it was, of someone in the Holocaust being shot, and then cutting to Trayvon being shot. And in cinema, you are taught to use image to make linkage. That is what that is montage, right? You connect pieces, but montage in itself does not necessarily mean truth. I mean, Leni Riefenstahl proves that to you, right? If anyone doesn't know who that is, look her up. She was the queen Nazi propagandist.
Yeah,
movies like Triumph of Will and all that type of stuff. And
she Jew.
Yo.
That's part of the contradiction that she struggled with. So we have to, again, like, by the way, I've used that example when people say Jews run Hollywood. I'm like, but to what end? Because she's a perfect example of what it means to be in charge of an industry you're not really running.
Right.
But we can always come back to that. Because in this part, we also get the lynching, right? Of this series of traumas, right? We get a whole
the lynchings.
I'm in there like, man, you're right. She really wanted us to suffer, because I was in there struggling. I was sitting here struggling. I'm like, man, this is.
Yeah, I had just put my daughter to sleep, or my fiance was putting my daughter to sleep, and I was sitting here watching it, just going like, are you serious? Are you really going? Yeah, I mean, the scenes of Dalits being humiliated. I just, but it made me honestly go back to. It made me actually think of Walter Benjamin. And when Benjamin talked about how we can see what modern times has given to us in our kind of alienation of self and connectivity, it has now brought us to the point where we aestheticize our own suffering and watch it back for pleasure. And this film also made me think about the politics of pleasure in a way. And why do we need to see things? And then what does DuVernay get out of subjecting mass audiences and mass culture to this kind of imagery over and over again? And I'll focus mainly on the blackness because I don't think she really cares about Jews, or she doesn't really care about Dalits either. Her concern really is with blackness. And Benjamin talked about the aestheticization of politics, right? How when you aestheticize politics, you defang it and you create a world where politics only lives in the sphere of sloganeering, things we know to be ineffective, faux political movies, and so forth and so on. And there's many cousins and many sides to it. But I think you can apply that to blackness. This is an aestheticization of blackness. And if you think about blackness as a political position, it gets even more crazy. She's using blackness as an aesthetic, and she's using it to let us sit through suffering, to bring home her point, to then give cover to herself and to her class elite people, and really doing the work of empire in Hollywood, basically saying, look, this is the political thing, origin. This is what Black people need to go and watch their pain regurgitated. So they'll go out and do this. This is the politics you need to, support. Jason England recently wrote about American fiction in The Defector. Shout out to Jason. And he talked about this, in the wake of the George Floyd killings, what Black Hollywood asked for was more work. The justice that you're going to give us for the murder of Floyd is better movie deals. Origin. So it's a manipulative circle. It keeps DuVernay employed at an elite level. It keeps someone like Wilkerson able to stay employed at an elite level. Things don't change for people on the bottom. Material conditions don't change. And these people maintain an elite status with white capital. And it's disgusting. I at the end of the film, when she's and this is like the last superhero moment, when Wilkerson walks off and she sees all the faces. I didn't say this. Someone wrote this on Letterboxd. They said at the end she sees the Trayvon Martin Force ghost.
Oh, damn.
It's real though.
It's like what it is.
Like she sees, for people who haven't seen the movie or never want to, when Wilkerson finally finishes the book and I think she's already presented the findings. I don't know if the book is out yet, but she's presented her thesis and her case. She leaves her, she has to, they juxtapose it with her closing off her mother's house to sell it. Because she wants to move on in her life, because also it's the house she lived in with her husband. So she walks out the door after everything, and first she sees the two Black people from the two Black Harvard scholars, and they nod at her. It's real Anakin.
Right.
Look, nod at her. Then she sees Ambedkar, I believe, next, and he gives a nod. And then at the end, you see Trayvon Martin with his hood. He takes it off. And I said, you people are out of your mind. You are out of your mind.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.